So the very brief session is just about the plain English summary, because we've said how important it is, and it is really the front door to your grant application. We just like to have a short session on it. If we think back to just remind you really of the 4 key propositions that were in Aldridge and Darrington's book, the importance of the project, the sort of success proposition that you can answer the question, the value for money proposition, and the competence proposition. Again, the plain English summary does address those things, in particular the importance and the success criteria. In a way, the plain English summary is a bit of a mini-me of the whole application. So it includes, obviously the aims and objectives, a bit of background, a bit of the methods, a bit about dissemination and impact. So it's a bit of a mini-me. It's basically getting your foot in the door. It provides sort of attention, immediate attention and orientation. It grabs people's attention. It orientates them to your application. It establishes immediately the importance of what you're doing, and it provides you a sort of preview. So if you fail to gain readers' interest here, you're unlikely to succeed elsewhere in your document. And I have heard people say, who sit on panels, if I can't see the importance in the plain English summary, I lose interest. So it is very important. It consists of clear, simple statements, as most of your application should, as you've probably gathered by now. No detailed arguments or justifications at this point. Basically, what is the project about and why it is important. So that's the problem. Why it is important to do this now. It basically breaks down the project and says how you will answer the project. So that's basically the plan. And it'll say how people will benefit from it. So the potential impact. So those are the things that you're looking for. The importance of projects should be immediately obvious, so we don't have to go around searching for a needle in a haystack. We want it to be in your face. So we really want to be able to see what the importance is straight away by looking at this summary. And if we do a little sort of comparison, I suppose, between scientific and plain English summaries, your scientific summary is more for specialty peer reviewers and non-specialty panel members to a lesser extent, but perhaps those who have some scientific knowledge, whereas the plain English summary would be pitched, I suppose, at lay panel members and non-specialty members who don't know about your subject area, but I can guarantee it'll also be read by your specialty peer review people as well. So everyone reads the plain English summary, basically. The sort of terms you can use in the scientific summary can be a bit more scientific, but obviously they do need to be explained if you don't have a lay summary. And the plain English summary should have no scientific terms. And if you are forced to use a scientific term, it really must be very, very clearly explained. Scientific summary, the language tends to be more formal. In the plain English summary, it can be informal, even colloquial, because the main purpose of it is to get the meaning across in simple terms. The plain English summary is a requirement for NIHR and other funders, so it'll normally be asked for. It sets the scene and the tone, and it can affect how the whole application will be judged, as I've said. It's sometimes the first, or usually the first part of the application read at committee. And of course, there is in brackets there sometimes only, as I say, if people lose heart at the plain English summary. We hope that doesn't happen, but it can if it really doesn't engage the reader. And it primes the reader and whets their appetite for what happens next in the application. This is just a quote from the NIHR. If the plain English summary is well written, somehow the whole application seems easier to assess. I have an idea of what it is about. So it's a good starting point. The plain English summary has 2 purposes. Primarily, it's for the reviewers and committees to have a better understanding of the application. So that's what its role is in a grant application. So it should excite all readers and get them to look further. It should engage lay and speed readers, and it should comfort detailed readers. Later on, plain English summaries are used for research funders to publicise their research, and for everyone, the public, health professionals, policymakers, etc., to understand the research. So they are used in contexts other than grant applications, obviously, as they're very useful materials to help people understand, for example, what research has been done and why and what it found. The NIHR want a clear, brief overview of research. They want it written clearly and simply. They want no jargon, and they want it to stand alone. Some general requirements. You have to think about your audience. Obviously, they're interested, but they're not specialists. A mistake that some people make is to sort of cut and paste your scientific abstract and try and, fiddle with a few words. That's not the way to approach it. You have to start again and think how you would explain it to your friend. If it is felt that your plain English summary is not clear and of a good quality, then you may be required to amend it prior to funding approval. And that sounds like a fairly minor punishment. The biggest problem is if people lose interest or are not excited by it or don't see the importance of the rest of the application, and it casts a shadow over it. Guidance that NIHR reviewers are given. They are asked whether the lay summary gives a clear explanation of the research. They say, does it help you carry out a review? If not, why not? Is the language appropriate and clear? If not, where are the problems? Are scientific terms, abbreviations, and jargon explained? If not, which terms? And then they ask the question, could the summary be used on its own to describe the research? So you're looking for something that can deal with those two issues. The NIHR provide guidance on writing plain English summaries, which would be very similar, I imagine, to the other funders' guidance. They want a bit of background. They want some clearly stated aims and objectives. They expect you to talk a little bit about the design and methods used, patient and public involvement, and knowledge mobilization. Do make sure you use the suggested headings. It just makes your life simpler. And again, it's a little irritation for reviewers if specific headings are asked for and they don't see them. So the background to the research covers what the problem is and how big it is, perhaps how much it costs NHS patients and other services, why the research needs to be done now, the aims of the research, basically what you're aiming to find out, and how patients, carers, public services, etc. will benefit from the research. The design and the methods used, so what design and methods have been chosen and why in simple language. Who are the proposed participants? They're very keen to know the sort of patient group. A patient and public involvement, NIHR refer to this now as working with people and communities. But basically, importantly, how have patients, public been involved in developing this research? So when you put in a grant application, it is expected that you will be talking to people with lived experience of research and other stakeholders in the development of your research grant application, and we'll have more on that on day 3. How will patients, public be involved in the conduct and management of the research? So going forward, once the research is funded and up and running, how will you involve patients? And then dissemination, basically, how will the findings be communicated and to whom? And as I say, they're not expecting just, academic papers and conferences. You have to be a lot more creative nowadays, and we will have a session on dissemination and impact on day 3. Just picking up on Bernard's comments about tools to help you assess the readability of your application. If we take this statement here, the arboreal swift-footed Canis rufus with a sudden and energetic leap traversed the apathetic terrestrial Canis familiaris. I have to credit that to Google AI. That has a flesh kincaid, which is another one of these indices, a grade of 18.2, a reading ease score of 0. The reading level is considered to be that of a college graduate, very difficult to read. If we turn it into the rather familiar thing that we all know, the fox jumped over the lazy dog, we have a flesh kincaid grade level of 2.5, a reading ease score of almost 90, and a reading level 6th grade. And obviously what we're doing is trying to aim for the simplest and most straightforward way of explaining things. First impressions count, as I think we've stressed enough already. So engage, don't enrage your reader. And we put together a series of resources here, and I need to credit Paul Hewitson, my colleague, who put together a big chunk of this presentation, and I'm just presenting it today with a few bits and pieces added. So there are some resources for you.